Dinosaurs plus demons equals dragons. A quick heads up for parents with younger kids, this video may be on the spookier side. You might want to preview it first. The shipwright's metal stake found its mark. The Carnotaurus is defeated. I like the idea of using the fallen creature as a partial frame for this panel. The character poses were really fun to draw. The shipwright bends forward in exhaustion and relief, the warthog arched backwards in fury, winding up for a double-fisted slam. As usual, I started with their skeletons. That helps me to confirm that the poses are going to work. In this context, there's no need to draw the full skeleton, though it is late October, so that would be thematically appropriate. Instead, I draw just enough to make sure my proportions are solid, and I have anchors to attach the muscles to. For reoccurring objects like the axe, it's worth building some simple models. It helps me to keep things consistent, and it also speeds the process along. Once I have the right angle, I can just paste the render right into the image and use it as part of my pencil layer. The warthog's musculature was particularly fun to draw in this shot. More dynamic poses like this really stretch your anatomical knowledge, no pun intended. This is why I recommend aspiring artists don't just learn about the muscle groups, but also learn about where they're anchored and why. It helps to speed you up a lot in situations like this. When you're just connecting point A to point B and point C to point D, it's a lot harder to get lost. Now, it's time to hide a bunch of that work. But like I've said many times, I always think it's worth it. This character is deceptively complicated, so I've been color coding his different elements to make it easier to keep track of things while I'm inking. While we watch the inking stage unfold, I hope you'll indulge a couple of housekeeping notes. First, thank you so much to everyone who has been following along. The comments, questions, suggestions, views, likes, follows, it's all been fuel in my tank to keep me going. Subscribe if you're not already. I've been working on this project for a year now, and I'm just getting started. Even if you don't watch every weekly video, if you're following along on YouTube, Instagram, X, or following for free on Patreon, you'll be among the first to know when physical books start to become available. I'd also like to give a huge shout out to my patrons. Your faith in me has been a massive inspiration. I look forward to my daily visits to the private Discord server for Sabertooth and Dragon patrons, where I post early panels as I complete them, people post their own artwork, and we talk about storytelling and independent projects. It's a small community right now, but you guys are great people. From now on, at the end of the videos, I'm going to showcase any Dead Gods art that people have sent in. If you end up making any art yourself, send it my way and I'll make sure it gets in there. So I made it all the way to the end of this panel and shared it with my patrons on Discord. Putting it in front of a few people made me realize, almost immediately, that I had forgotten a critical element. He just drove a long piece of metal into the brain case of a giant monster. There would have to be some splashback. Now I can't imagine this shot without it. It's the grisly cherry on top of the violent sundae. Now, this is the only panel this week. There is an important element of this setting that needs to be explored, and I figured it was worth taking the time for it. A handful of people have asked, what are dragons? Are they just dinosaurs? Are they something else? If so, what's the difference? I thought it would be worth articulating it in more detail. To do so, I have to explain the metaphysics of Dead Gods. Watchers are a classification of angels. Unlike the more heavenly focused angels like seraphim, their role was more earthly focused. In this story, they'll exist on a spectrum from malicious to ambivalent. Many of them found human women to be desirable, and they sired children with them. Those children were the Nephilim. To answer the question that's likely popped into your head, I imagine they start off small. These giants aren't fully human. When they die, their spirits don't simply go where human spirits go. They inherit some aspect of their earthbound father's natures and are doomed to linger after death. Spirits, however, are not meant to be bodiless. When an unclean spirit goes out of a man, he goes through dry places, seeking rest and finds none. The most obvious way to separate a Nephilim from its spirit is death. But their fathers, the Watchers, also offered the world the monkey's paw gift of pharmakia. With the right plants and chemicals, they can temporarily exit their physical form. In this state, they can inhabit the bodies of weak or willing humans. This is a visual medium, and while the most obvious clues that someone is possessed will be through their performance, I wanted to come up with a shorthand for communicating when someone is occupied. In life, they'll be represented as having red sclera and pale irises. Since they're huge, the bodies they inhabit will take on the same look, at an abnormally large size. One thing we learn from the primary text is that these spirits will also inhabit the bodies of animals. Rather than being cast into the abyss, Legion begged to be allowed to enter a herd of pigs. There's a true story from 1898 in what is now Kenya about the Ghost and the Darkness, 2 male lions that terrorized a railway work camp, killing between 35 to 135 people. They behaved in unusual, unnatural ways. They deliberately targeted humans instead of going for lions' preferred prey. Lions tend to avoid humans unless they're desperate. They hunted as a highly coordinated, prideless pair, largely under the cover of night. They were mature lions but lacked manes. They were incredibly intelligent, avoiding traps and gunfire, and they were able to enter fortifications. They were undeterred by gunfire, thorn fences, or any other tactics that would normally make lions seek easier prey elsewhere. Evidence suggests that they killed more frequently than necessary for sustenance, leaving some remains partially or entirely uneaten. By the way, if you haven't seen it, check out the Val Kilmer movie about this from 1996. It's great. Now, I'm not specifically suggesting that these lions were possessed, though many of the survivors certainly did. I am using this story as inspiration. It's scary enough to think of modern-day predators being inhabited by malicious intelligences. In the antediluvian world, the deadly roster of bodies available is an absolute nightmare. I imagine that over time, the creatures start to take on more and more of the characteristics of their occupant, including increased scale and coloration. Why? Well, because it looks cool. Also, again, visual medium. Ultimately, this means that dinosaurs are animals. Some are prey, some are predators, but they act in reasonably predictable ways. A dinosaur that has been possessed by a Nephilim spirit becomes a dragon, more intelligent, more malicious, less predictable, more deadly. These metaphysics open up a wide range of options. For one, the pharmakia that allows Nephilim spirits to wander from their bodies also allows humans to traverse the same plane. In a vast, globe-spanning empire rife with conflicting megalomaniacal gods, it would be advantageous to have some form of communication that isn't limited by distance. The ability to join something like an astral projection Zoom call would be advantageous. Though with Zoom, you only rarely encounter cannibalistic entities seeking weaker souls to devour. Some spirits may have spent too much time bodiless, preferring to stalk the earth from behind the veil. I imagine a bodiless entity that specializes in assassinations. His followers worship in temples near every major city, willingly offering up their bodies to be used to attack his targets. On the dragon side, you may have already realized that this gives me the opportunity to inject one of the best aspects of these classic monsters, the ability to talk. It may be limited to the particular anatomy of the host animal, but you can be sure I'll stretch that as far as it'll go. It also explains why dragons would engage in the peculiar practice of collecting treasure hoards. While this behavior would likely never be seen in natural dinosaurs, the spirit possessing a dragon knows what it takes to lure people into its den against their better judgment. I'll also be able to widen the aperture and introduce other animals that have been taken over. For example, I've drawn several serpent worshippers over the course of this project, so introducing colossal talking snakes just makes good, plain sense. Thanks for watching.